Hey guys, today on the show I've got someone by the name of Stephen Warren. He's on the show today to talk a little bit about his background in programming. He runs a company called SWATstat. Welcome to the show, Stephen.
Hey John, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So, Stephen, I guess do you want to talk a little bit about your company and your background in programming and what it is you're doing today?
Yeah, look, the company was kind of set up just in 2014. It's basically a culmination of 22 years of me being in the IT industry. I started back in Australia working in industries and what have you, and got involved in writing software for large agencies as well as small businesses. So that kind of led me to coming over here to Southeast Asia. And I guess one thing unique about the company now, SWATstat, is it's kind of location independent. I was stuck in the route of kind of like believing and even convincing myself that we need to be stuck in an office. And today in today's world, everyone can live kind of like independent. In fact, even up until about 6 months ago, I had an office that could fit 20 people in it, and everyone was coming to work doing the 9 to 5 gig. And one day I just said, "Hey guys, who would prefer to work from home?" And basically every hand shot up in the room. So I was thinking, why am I spending all this money providing some office, aircon, internet for everyone to come to an office that they don't want to be at, and really prefer to working from home. So that light came on, and I said, well, why do this? So ever since then, my team, my projects are all running them from home right now, and I'm currently located in Davao City in the Philippines, and this is kind of like my center hub for all of my projects right now.
Yeah, I mean, I know I've personally done a little bit of work on Odesk. I've like outsourced some work, and I know some of the employees, the people that I hired, I think were based out of that same general area.
Yeah, look, Odesk is a really good option. One of the gotchas for Odesk, of course, is that it really relies on you, the product owner, if you're going to build something, to actually have a lot of experience in project management, because those guys can go off in their own tangent and rack up a whole bunch of hours real quickly. So
Sure.
it's not the complete end, but yeah, Odesk is a great industry leader and providing great resources should you need it. But yeah, still requires that strong project management background.
Sure, sure. So, I mean, what are some of the projects that you and your team work on, like some of the software, you know, products that you've developed?
Look, at any given time, we normally have about 5 projects on the run. My target market is really across the globe, so it could be US based, UK, Australia, or even in Europe. So typically, we've done projects for Fortune 500 companies in the States, in industries like Yellow Pages, so online car sales. We've done kind of like Amazon type applications, so e-commerce, and anything medical, finance, insurance, basically covering a pretty wide scope.
Wow. Now, I'm just curious because of all the things you mentioned just then. I actually recently, I mean, I full time I work e-commerce, and I've been doing that since March, and then I also just opened my own Amazon account. So I have to say I'm a little curious about some of the software you've developed that works, I'm assuming, with Amazon. Like, what are some of the tools that you've done along those lines?
Actually, not a lot on the front end. What the projects we've been building is for a German-based company, and they're actually Amazon's #1 kind of competitor there. And basically, they've got about 160, 200 suppliers in Southeast Asia. So we've built like a back end. You could imagine what goes on as far as combining those 160, 200 suppliers that need to fill up a container and send it from basically Hong Kong port across to Germany. So we've built that entire back-end portal, not really the front-end side of it for them. but yeah, they are basically a big player in that market. So,
Wow.
but
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty
definitely done projects in the Magento, kind of like in that Magento e-commerce, but not particularly with that with Amazon.
sure, sure. Yeah, I've worked with a Magento site as well. I know that's definitely a very developer friendly platform.
Yeah, yeah, it seems to be in that market. The other one that seems to be pretty common is the WooCommerce, using kind of like the WordPress
Yep.
protocol.
Yeah,
It's kind of
that's what I'm using on my
easy.
own e-commerce site right now, and it's working wonderfully. Um,
Yeah,
even as the only thing I really foresee is a lot of these like applications that have kind of come about specifically like inventory management. Some of these bigger companies don't integrate into WooCommerce, whereas they'll integrate with the more widely known like Magento or say like Shopify.
sure, sure.
But
Basically, you'll find though sometimes the trick or the lure for a lot of the WooCommerce and the Magentos of the world is the one-click easy install.
sure,
Um, but that kind of like that can kind of like lead you into longer term pains on things like security and the like when you get into a more busy site. And there are other companies that kind of like the next level up, which are kind of like the Shopify's of the world, that provide you that level of security on a platform. So
yeah,
you kind of like it's kind of like e-commerce for beginners, and then you kind of like level up, and then you'll get to like the Amazons of the world that have to then build their own high-tech security platform on their own
right,
Java-based system
right.
or something similar.
Now, what are some of like the more challenging like projects that you've come across, for you and your team?
Oh, the biggest challenge is being location independent. Is actually to ensure that you understand what the client requires. So I've written a number of ebooks which you can find on my site, but one of the main things I try to point out is that if you've got $1,000 to spend for a website, going offshore is not really your thing, because of the basically a high cost to deal with a location independent firm like mine, and actually to understand the and to share that documentation. So we actually create two documents. One's called the business requirements document, another the technical specifications document. So it's only until you get kind of like up to projects in kind of like the 500 hours to 1,000 hours type that it actually makes sense to go offshore. So it's kind of like the analogy of a Mack truck, pulling 2 ton. If it doesn't make sense to use that to go to the local 7-Eleven. But if you've got a larger project and you want to get the cost efficiencies of going offshore, it does take the larger projects to make sense for that to happen. But we tend to look at that, make sure that those two documents are signed off, so we fully understand and we confirm. And then once we've got that that process down, then we're pretty much all good to go. We can estimate and move forward. So those are the major challenges: is try to convince the clients that if they've got a really small project, i.e. a word process that they want to spend $1,000 on, they are really better going to the local guy to do that, because it's the old thing is that $1 a day in India, $1 a day in China just is a fallacy now. Everyone has access to this, like I say, some Odesk, and that gap is closing very quickly on what wages are worth in like Southeast Asia versus what they are on shore.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, it is really interesting because I really only had my first exposure to kind of outsourcing and seeing what the capabilities were. But I mean, I've been able to, find people that would, I think in one example, like when I built out my site, I had all these products that basically didn't have, um, any categorization done. So I had to hire someone to do that. I could have done it myself, but it was really grueling work. So to outsource and find someone to do this for like $3 an hour, and maybe they spend 7, 8 hours on it, and I'm only going to pay 20, $30. It's totally worth it.
Yeah, correct. So you got to do that. You really got to do that balance of, what's it actually going to cost your time, and actually that for the developer, in an outsourced environment, what's it going to take for that developer to absorb the knowledge that you want them to, and then being able to order to go and do it, versus going to a local guy around the corner and saying, hey, this is all I need. Whiteboard it in front of him, and you'll get it done in a lot quicker time, which basically the ROI is much better to do that. But if you're looking for the much larger project, like I said, the one where you sit down and you want to get the documentation right, and you've got a larger chunk of development to get done, then it does definitely make sense, because the cost savings there are up to 60% if you're going offshore for the mid to larger projects.
Sure. So I mean, have you pretty much done software like in any scale? Like, I mean, it could be a smaller project, versus like people that are looking for these really in-depth systems, to be created for what really their needs.
You look like a smaller project for me would be kind of like a new mobile app. So basically, in either iOS native or Android native. The third option is to actually have a hybrid app, which is kind of like using like PhoneGap. In fact, we've actually used an application called AppGyver just recently. So AppGyver runs on a platform, and then it runs on another platform called PhoneGap, which then enables you to build that hybrid app on both iOS and Android stores. It kind of just requires like the programmer to be HTML5, CSS level. It doesn't require him to know those native codes. So that's kind of like one of the smaller projects that we do. It up to like I mentioned, kind of like the several thousand hours, where we're doing basically a back end for Fortune 50 companies in Europe and US.
Right. Yeah, so you really just about it could really scale in terms of depending on what a client is looking for.
Yeah, another typical client. Someone got a startup funding, could be from a Kickstarter or Indiegogo, and typically they've got 3 months, and they need kind of like 2 or 3 developers and some testers to build out something at least into a workable beta version. And then when they get the beta version up, then they went going looking for second round of funding. So that could then easily run into phase 2 and phase 3. So that could springboard, and that's another atypical client of mine.
So have you worked with? So you've sort of developed software for some of these crowdfunding based campaigns.
Yeah.
Do you have any tools, something anyone could check out if they wanted to go over to Indiegogo or Kickstarter?
Yeah, the going through that I've got right now is kind of like still under stealth, so it's kind of like under beta and hasn't been released.
Oh, okay.
But just generally the type of apps you're talking is, they could be basically providing a niche that's really missing in the market. So one that works is kind of like a voice recorder that would go to that you could actually email. So as opposed to what Facebook just picked up, the WhatsApp, kind of like some kind of a voice chat to each other. This is actually just using the #1 application used on mobile phones today, which is mail. And it's actually just say, for example, grabbing your voice, recording it, and then basically attaching that link into a mail and sending it out. So that's something that's very, very, very simple to set up, very quick, and you can just pop that onto the App Store and very user friendly. Yeah.
Sounds like a cool, interesting app. I don't personally. I know nowadays, like I could be driving and start talking to my phone, but I just never do it.
Yeah. So once again, something like that could easily go into kind of like, okay, I've got my voice now. Now I want to have I want to say, email John, and how it'll go. So you'll talk, then just say email John. So those are kind of like first phase, second phase, third phase, and then one could be like a email John message 3. So you could have a pre-recorded message that would actually email it out. So those and they could go into kind of like business versions and company versions. So there's a number of phases that those things could through.
Sure, sure. I'm trying to think of some other questions I had for you. I know I did want to ask, like most of the employees that you have, I mean, are they kind of diverse all throughout the country, or where are they mostly based out of?
Yeah, so right now, I've got developers both here in Southeast Asia and Eastern Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So they tend to come in better skills, and depending on which application. So we're doing like Django on Python right now out of Eastern Europe, and those guys are working kind of like 10 times quicker than what I can source locally. So they're about 3 times more expensive, but 10 times quicker. So it just balances out. Locally here, as far as project coordination, manual testing, documentation, is really fantastic here. So it's about a third of the cost of US, Australia, or UK. People in that vertical. So it makes sense to hire locally here. And the designers locally here are just as expensive as LA or anywhere across California, where really the design hub of the world is. The designers are most of my designers are based in the US. So yeah, quite diverse. Quite diverse. But the great thing there is, in the morning, your designers could be designing something, and then in the afternoon, your documentation could be getting written up, and by night time, your developers are starting to develop. So it's kind of like what they call follow the sun development.
Sure. So, I'm kind of curious because I've never really approached anyone on the topic of like software development, but let's say myself, I wanted to get an application developed for Android, and I really had an idea in mind. I mean, what would kind of be like the starting process of that from your side? I mean, do you have like a whole system where you go through and figure out like sort of the building blocks of how this is going to all come together?
Yeah, look, it usually starts, and I could say 99 times out of 100. Somebody went with someone and said, I've got this great idea.
Yeah.
Grabbed the napkin and a pen and started writing, and then scanned and said, here's my brilliant idea. You understand it? And I go, yeah, perfect, let's start, right? That's a job. So yeah, we start very much with, we got a business requirements document that is quite iterative. So you go backwards and forwards, a number of times. And you yourself could actually mature that document by understanding, oh, well, I didn't think about that part of it, or I didn't think about this, and what the screens are going to look like. And so there's actually an iterative process. And once you've got that business requirements document down, and you say, yep, you now understand exactly what I want, and you've got this document that you can go to mum and say, look, I've designed the masterpiece now. So once that requirements document is agreed upon, now we could go to the developers and say, this is exactly what we want.
Sure.
So you don't really bring the developers into the game until you've got that business requirements document down. And then the developers are going to go and say, okay, let's put some technical spin. How's the best way to deliver this for John? And they'll then say, well, we're going to use these tools on this platform, and this is how long it's going to take us to do it. And we've got manual testers, and the testers will come out and say, okay, this is how long it's going to test. And we combine all this together into what's called the technical specifications document that actually comes up with how long you're actually looking to take, when it's deliverable, etc. And then so then that process is, you end up with this is X amount of cost, which then moves into the development side, And we actually, I could just tell you a story. When I was back in the government in Australia, we would do a project for 6 months, and the client would be kind of like, over, I can't see what's going on. And then at the end of the 6 months, you're saying, hey, what's going on? And you say, oh, I need another 2 months budget. And they didn't see. Now we're using agile Scrum methodology. So basically, every 2 weeks, the client is seeing exactly what's going on. So we put a link on the web. The clients are following on basically even daily. But every 2 weeks, we sit down and say, hey, John, let's have a look at the project, look at the product, how it's going. You can basically see, oh, okay, it looks different than what I did in the documents. I want to change this here and change that there. Some kind of user experience. So yeah, that's basically how the project, runs from grabbing the concept of the idea through to some kind of delivery. And you may end up at the end of the delivery with something, not totally different, but really just crafted the way through, rather than kind of like closing your eyes for 3 to 6 months saying, right. At the end, green doesn't look as good as blue, or that box there doesn't look as good as down here. So it's very much this agile methodology now of working through communication with the client to get exactly what he wants.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, now in terms of if I come to you with an idea, obviously I would assume most people aren't going to just upfront pay for this whole project before it's even started, in development. I mean, how does that kind of work? Is there like sort of an upfront fee to kind of get things going, and then you sort of pay, charge people towards the end once the project is complete? How do you handle that sort of task? I would imagine it's got to scale with every project.
Yeah, it really depends on the project, but we kind of like ask for a deposit, up front. So we're kind of like 2 weeks in the front and 2 weeks behind. So it's kind of like, just following along the thing. But it really depends on the scale. But yeah, a typical one maybe 1/3 at the beginning, 1/3 halfway through, and 1/3 at the end. And that would be difficult if it was kind of like a 2 or 3 year project, right? So it really depends on the scale, but
sure,
we try to like overrun the budget and overrun the bookkeeping side of it can get out of hand. We do it too often. So.
Right. Yeah, I imagine that every project it would be different. I would foresee. I've just kind of thought in my mind, I see these people that come out with these pieces of software essentially that they don't do any of the programming themselves. I know there's a pretty big blogger that actually posted an article just today. For anyone listening, it's the 7th of October today? Yeah. It's Tuesday the 7th. Someone by the name of Spencer Hawes posted an article today on his blog Niche Pursuits that basically he was joining up with a small software company because he had a team of people develop a keyword research tool for Google keyword research, and he didn't actually do any of the coding himself. He just outsourced all the work, and then he does all the work to promote that and make it the way that he wants it. And I've seen how well he's done with that, so it kind of intrigues me a little bit. Really all it takes is an idea and then being able to execute it.
Yeah. I've used his product Longtail Pro, to build niche sites in the past, and he's got an awesome product there, and he's going to focus on local developers there. So. Good luck to him for that, and I think he'll do a good job with it. But,
that's the tool I was referring to as well. So. And it is a pretty good. It's a pretty good tool. I actually pay for the subscription for it, so it's one of the only subscriptions I really have going on right now. But
it definitely served that market.
What was that?
It's a great idea, and it certainly served that market.
Definitely. I mean, it fits right up his audience is so in tune with. That's basically what everyone there, anyone that's following him, that it just makes sense. If you're going to build a niche site, then you really need to do the research first. It's funny because I actually found I'm featured on this site called Pro Associate. It's a software kit that basically it's a plugin for WordPress that you can import products from Amazon into your WordPress site using WooCommerce. And I originally was like one of the beta testers, and I've communicated a lot with their team and the head guy, Lewis. And I have my site, and I originally designed my site based around a specific keyword. And there's been a lot of like referral traffic over the last year from just having my site listed up on that testimonial page. And I actually found someone went ahead and tried to copy my site. Like literally they just copied the entire niche and made a site doing the exact same thing. But they didn't use an exact match domain, so I have a pretty strong suspicion they're not doing very well with it at all.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was kind of funny, but in some ways I don't know that because my site's doing really well, and obviously I've done a better job designing it and everything. So just sort of funny to see that people try to stomp on your, get into your competition there.
Yeah, I think a lot of the industry is starting to waver now because of the kind of like the Google algorithms that they've thrown out, the pandas and all other fluffy or flurry animals, whatever they've put out. So
yeah,
I mean, I kind of gave up on that when I went to a Google event here, and they were basically wanting to demonstrate how exact name domains or those perfectly well domains don't work anymore because now they've changed their algorithm, and they typed in something for an example, and the exact match domain won every 3 times they tried to find an example. So it was kind of like, well, if Google can't demonstrate that they've devalued the exact match domains, then I'm obviously in the wrong industries. It was kind of like
Google is like. It's really hard to. It's a whole other topic. I mean, we could have a whole other episode just on talking about this stuff. I mean, they did this big recent update with all the private blog networks, and they de-index, mass sites, and kind of cause an uproar in the SEO industry. But yeah, that's a whole other topic. It's just kind of crazy. I've sort of ignoring the SEO stuff right now. It's just not really it's not very reliable in my opinion. But
well, for old codgers like myself, I mean, the SEM is much more easy and verifiable. Just on my own experience, not plugging in Google or Bing, but you can do some very clear A/B tests on SEM. You get some pretty quick results. So you throw up some keywords and you go and buy them on the AdWords or the Bing ads, and just kind of like work out what's for you. And I just think that's much more quantifiable now. And I think for the two companies, I think that's where their profit lies, in actually selling the ads rather than user experience. So I think that's where they've pushed the market to. And for me, with the business sites, that's exactly where I live right now. It's kind of like in SEM. Once I've found what works, then I can start playing some SEO. But it's not something that you can put food on the table for. Definitely going after some SEO keywords.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, even with that recent change, they removed Google authorship. That was kind of it's like a clear way that that they want more going on with their ad system, because they don't want people clicking on authorship links. They'd rather have people clicking on ads. It makes sense,
Yeah, and one thing to be very clear on those things, you've really got to understand even more than just popping some keywords. You really need to understand what's actually going to convert in your market, and that's exactly what I'm going through right now with my business. Is throwing up keywords, even like outsource your software development. Who's actually keying in those words? Is that actually what people are keying in, or do people actually say, I want to put a Facebook icon on my website? This is kind of like, this is more like value add for the person or I want my website to be responsive. I want my website to go on an iPad. So what we have traditionally thought as keywords, you're going to get either an IT student at a college kind of like keying in those words, or another developer, but your key target client, you got to get in their mind. What are they typing? how do you find somebody that that is looking for that, rather than just the simple old,
Sure, sure.
rather than outsource software development, which is kind of like a gimme, right? Nobody's actually doing that.
Yeah, I mean, there was a fellow that I interviewed. I don't know if you know him. His name's Shane Mallah. He runs a blog called I Am Impact, and he talked about how he tried when he started out in internet marketing. He started doing a lot of things like guest blogging, and just never really had a lot of success with it. And basically started releasing software products, and that's how he essentially built up to where he is today. And he just put out a pretty awesome theme called, like, it's Thrive Content Builder, I think. And what it does is he can, pretty much do a lot of features like creating landing pages that are drag and drop. And it's one of the best plugins I've seen that does it. So he sort of like finds these problems that he couldn't figure out by, grabbing other software tools, and then he'll just create a solution with his own software. And he does a really good job executing it. Making it really polished and really professional, like lots of work put into them. So I think that's really the way to go if you're gonna do any software, especially for WordPress. Being able to kind of conquer what some of these other people are doing, create something that's just really awesome and affordable.
Yeah, you'll never go broke. Kind of like providing solutions for people. That's definitely what they're willing to spend money on.
Yeah, I mean,
much easier to sell.
I'm kind of in the same, like, I'm in the boat right now where I'm trying to think of maybe private label ideas for Amazon, or possibly having something designed that could stand out and I could call my own and not have to rely on someone else's product to make money with. Since I'm going to be selling on Amazon, sort of the same idea, really. I don't want to utilize something I could kind of brand.
Yeah. There's a lot of good places to go to learn that. I've been personally involved in a lot of different masterminds over the few, and it actually wasn't until I left the mastermind group, like I was in 2 location independent mastermind groups up until probably the beginning of this year, and I used to just tell everyone that came to the Philippines, I just said, look, you're in a great niche, you've got a great market, you can be location independent. And then, but me, I'm in this software development, I must have an office, so I'm totally different. And it wasn't until I took a step back and said, I'm not any different than that. I need location independent. Also, I need to go where the client needs me, not where the developers and the back end need. So it's kind of like a total reversal, but definitely those mastermind groups can be great in kind of like people who have been there and done that. And
I'm kind of working on starting up one myself right now to see if we can get things rolling with an Amazon kind of group, people that are all going to be selling on Amazon. But yeah, I've got to run here. My girlfriend's actually home, and she just popped in here.
Awesome.
So I appreciate you coming on and taking the time to join me and talk a little bit about your company.
Okay, it's been fantastic, John. Thanks a lot.
Yep. Talk to you later.